Hi there, this is section 112. We're going to talk about invalid proofs. And an invalid proof is a proof that contains an error in reasoning or that contains invalid assumptions. And usually those assumptions happen at the very beginning. So here's my spoiler alert. If you ever have to find one of these, basically look at dividing by a variable. Anytime you're squaring or square rooting stuff, that can add extra solutions that don't make sense. Circular reasoning, which is kind of like, there's an example down here that talks about circular reasoning, but it's like using your assumption to prove it at the end. Anything that contains a stereotype. And also, I'm always really leery anytime in math when you have the word all or never in it. All right, let's look at some examples. Okay, first one. This is one of my favorites. Science teachers can't be female. I was actually told that on my first day of internship. I don't know if you guys ever had interns at school, but those were those student teachers who got to come and try and be a real teacher for a semester and see how it went. Well, that's what I was told my very first day. Joanne is a female, therefore Joanne can't be a science teacher. Okay, so that is a logical conclusion. However, there's a problem. This part was an invalid assumption. So if where you start is wrong, the whole thing is wrong. All right, the next one, Gov's proof. Okay, this one gets a little hard. You can read through it in the textbook if you want, but I'll try and make it simple for you. All right, so suppose that A plus B is equal to C. This statement can be written as, okay, so this part is basically 4A minus 3A is equal to A. So they're doing this weird substitution. So where the A is, they're putting the 4A minus 3A. That's where that comes from. And they did the same thing with the B, right? So if you were to take that line out and simplify it, it would take you back to that. And the same thing with the C. So just some weird substitution stuff going on. And then what they did is they reorganized it. They left the A and the B on this side with the 4's, and they brought the 4C over, so that's why it's minus 4C. And then they had 3A plus 3B, so they moved this to this side, they moved this one over, and they left the 3C there. Now, kind of the step, they showed it as factoring, but think of it this way. 4A plus 4B minus 4C is equal to 3A plus 3B minus 3C. And they divided this by 4, divided this by 4, divided by this by 4, and divided this by 3, and this one by 3, and this one by 3. And that's how they got this statement, right? 4 times A plus B minus C, 3 times A plus B minus C. And then they divided each side, and it says right here, by A plus B minus C, by this by A plus B minus C. And then that canceled out, which left us 4 is equal to 3. And why is that an invalid proof? Because you can't divide by variables. Boom. All right, Liz's proof here. I assumed that negative 5 was equal to 5. Okay, right there. There's the problem. Well, that's the first problem. Okay, the second one. Excuse me, when you square stuff, it tends to bring in roots that aren't correct. In other words, it gets some crazy answers can happen. So be aware of any kind of proof that involves squaring stuff. And I got a true statement, and it is true that 25 equals 25. But that says this must be correct. Well, no, this is the example of circular reasoning. Yeah, not so good. But basically, that first step where you assume that you make some kind of assumption that doesn't make any sense. And it should be at that point that your proof falls apart. So that's what to look for. The big ones are dividing by a variable or dividing by 0, squaring things or square rooting, circular reasoning, which is where your assumption comes back at the end, stereotypes, that's for like the non-mathy stuff, and again, the words all or never. All right, that's the end of the proof.